Now, let's get into some issues and some other things that are going on. Obviously, this whole thing in Libya is been a really very interesting issue. You hear arguments from both the left and the right in terms of should we be there or should we took too long to get there. And so I really want to start with, I'm going to jump you into this, Lori, and start talking about what's going on there, and should we be concerned about what might happen when we get rid of Gaddafi? Who's going to be there afterwards?
Well, that's a major issue because we're not really aware of whether or not there are terrorist groups that are going to wait until Gaddafi apparently was against Al Qaeda, and so now the worry is whether or not they're waiting for him to be ousted, and then they can come in and fill whatever void is, because we basically don't know what's going to happen if he is removed. So the problem is basically whether or not we should be there is a big question, because we're in so many other places already,
Right.
and we're spending a lot of money that we don't have to spend to begin with. But then that same issue that comes up all the time is, first of all, certain countries have to deal with their issues themselves. And the other problem is, there are a lot of problems all over the world. Are we going to just jump into everybody's issues each time that, we disagree with the way they're handling things?
I thought the thing was interesting when they talked about this whole humanitarian issue, and I thought about, child soldiering, I talked about genocide in some other countries or whatever, in the Congo and all that, and I don't see the United States didn't set up no-fly zone or go into those countries or whatever. So I said it has to be some type of economic interest that they have here, and that's the reason why they went in. What, is that an assumption? Do you think that's it?
It's kind of funny. We talked about this on the program on Monday. And I first laid the groundwork for the conversation by quoting the president. I think he was in Chile on Monday, and stated that according to American policy, Gaddafi must go. Now, I think that was an excellent statement if you really look at it, because I think he is right. American policy is that Gaddafi must go.
Right.
Now, we know that when he ran for President Obama, or then he was candidate, he criticized Bush for illegal war, going in without congressional consent, and other things. But he seemed to be a part of doing something similar to Bush in this instance. But the way we kind of spun it on the program is the United States going in Libya under the guise of humanitarian violations or human rights violations. Now, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Gaddafi sits on the Security Council, or one of the councils in the UN. According to Minister Farrakhan, which I tend to agree, it's other ways that you could have dealt with this, especially if the UN was going to be involved,
Right.
where you could try to get to the bottom of what's going on. Because there's been other countries, just like you stated, that has blatant human rights violations. Darfur, with slavery
Right.
going on there.
Right.
China, when they had Tiananmen Square and they showed a tank running over people out there protesting. There was no planes going in there, no-fly zones, no threats, no troops. But, we see that they went into to Libya, and I went on Libya Online, also Reuters, talked about in 2004, after Bush and Gaddafi reached agreements on the $1.5 billion settlement
Okay,
for the Lockerbie, Scotland bombing and the bombing of the German discotheque, that that 1.5, I think, would be spent by Libya to compensate the survivors, and 300 million was supposed to be given by the United States to innocent victims of the United States bombing. Right after that, then it was open door for a bunch of European and American companies. I read off a list of them on the air: ExxonMobil,
Right.
Halliburton,
Right.
Dow Chemicals. A bunch of companies ran in there with exploratory work on hydrocarbons,
Right.
oil, and natural gas. So, the evidence shows that this is about money. It's not about human rights violations.
Yeah, the conversation kind of changed because Bush had a meeting with Gaddafi, And then all of a sudden, you know, like for example, John McCain has been talking about we should set up something like we did in Afghanistan. Like Afghanistan was a success, we should be giving weapons to the rebels. Is what he just said today. And like if you know, like Afghanistan was a major success, right? You know, 20 years later, we you know, after they fought the Russians, we're in there trying to clean up the mess that we started. And the other thing that's very interesting about John McCain and him talking about Gaddafi was that he went there in 2008. Him and Joe Lieberman and Leslie Graham, and these are really war hawks, right? They were down there, okay, and they were talking about how what a remarkable change there's been, and he's becoming part of the global community again. All of a sudden now you're saying he needs to go. So obviously, to me, something else is bigger than this, and they're trying to frame the conversation. They just got NATO to agree today to take over the no-fly stuff. So our preference was that, okay, the way Obama set it up was that NATO was going in with all of us, right? We all going in together. But then every rocket that was launched was American.
Yeah, and the issue now is, I mean, we've already seen what happens when we go in with no clear strategy or no exit strategy. I mean, and even though the president's saying, you know, there definitely will not be a ground initiative, you know, we're in there. You know, once you start bombing stuff, you're in there. Yeah. And, you know, like we talked about earlier, we don't have the money to begin with because we have several wars going on already. You know, and now we're going to go in there and arbitrarily start saying, well, we're for democracy and we're doing this to, you know, for humanitarian reasons. And it, like you said, it's very clearly not just that issue. You know, otherwise this would have been done a long time ago. I'm sure there have been people who have been against Gaddafi for quite a while, but there's a reason why things are happening now. But, you know, I'm sure we're not going to find that out.
You better believe if Gaddafi was losing and stuff and the rebels were winning and the United States would have never went in there. You better believe it. And then, you know, the thing is interesting because they talked about, you know, how he's attacking his own people and all that. Well, I mean, England should be quiet. That's how this country got created, wasn't it?
We talked about that.
They hired the Prussians and brought them in. They hired, like they said, Gaddafi did with the Africans bringing them in. They brought in Prussians to fight against their own people, whatever, you know, and they used tactics against their own people.
The bigger thing that I look at is that President Obama's platform to become president was pulling out of war.
Right.
And I don't hear the people who were so much in support of that. I don't hear those voices crying about what's going on now.
I think people are confused about this issue. I think that this, as Laurie has said, has not been articulated as to why we're there. There's dissent. There's some people, even actually I got to give credit to Congressman Rangel. He's been one of the people that's been pushing the issue. But the thing is, though, people don't know the facts, and if they don't know the facts, they don't know what side to be on or what to articulate. So they're still trying to figure it out, and unfortunately with the corporate media, they're getting the same story. They're being fed the same thing over and over again. This is about human rights. Well, you don't practice human rights in your own country.
Yeah.
Let alone talk about some other country.
And you have to look at the hypocrisy of the United States, because if he makes a statement that says it's U.S. policy, you look at China, that we get so many goods and services from. They're a communist nation. They have humanitarian problems over there.
And they produce a lot of their products with prison labor.
Exactly. And we still, but we're not going over there to intervene because we can't.